Thank you, Lisa, and obviously thank you to everyone who's attended. I appreciate the student leaders who are here with us as well in the crowd. Yeah, I mean, this is not easy. Look, I got a script in front of me for this, but my name is Nathan Mizell. I am the city's youngest elected official. I am a longtime police oversight practitioner. And really most importantly today, I am a Cal alum and someone who lives only a couple hundred feet from the park. I want to be very clear and speak plainly about what happened on January 3rd and the following week plus. What we saw was police brutality, police profiling, and the degradation of basic constitutional rights in our city. All of this condones and seemingly celebrated by the UC. In my capacity as a Rent Board Commissioner, I sent a letter on January 19th to Chancellor Christ and to UCPD Chief Pittman asking if they could account for any of what we had seen over that week plus. To be clear, this included the illegal ID checks, as Lisa mentioned, and just to underscore for folks, this is not a stop and identify state. This is not a stop and ID state. It's very clear in our law. The police do not have carte blanche to do what they like, and it cannot stop you and ask for your ID and force you to give it to them. This is well established. The UC still has no explanation for this, and they have still refused to respond to my letter now almost 2 months since. Some of what I heard from UCPD officers, often sergeants and lieutenants, on those days was the response was paranoia. That the university sometimes cares and sometimes doesn't. That they didn't even believe, a UCPD sergeant, let me be clear, did not even believe they had the authority to conduct the operation they were conducting. And yet, the UC had no problem greenlighting hundreds of officers being in our community, occupying the streets, and demanding basic ID, and demanding that folks really turn over their constitutional rights. Now, I want to be clear what I'm talking about, folks. When we speak of the First Amendment, obviously free speech, which is so important to this university and its hollowed history. It's one of the reasons I came here. I was told we respect free speech in Berkeley. Well, when it came to suppressing speech across a 6-block area, that is nearly 27 Sproul Plazas large, folks. The UC had no problem doing it with no notice and with no explanation. When we dive into the Fourth Amendment rights and your protections of constitutional privacy in the state of California, the UC had no problem demanding folks' ID, demanding their residence, demanding even their electricity bills and other statements to prove that you're a member of our community. Often enforced by officers who live hundreds of miles away from our community. We had one CHP officer, I was right there, they stopped someone just up over on Dwight. And they're like, do you live here? You know, this is a younger gentleman. He was concerned about being asked this question. This officer didn't even know he was standing on Dwight, questioning our community members about who this community is.
Shame.
Now, I want to be clear, these onerous requirements for IDs and other bills, they have no place in our streets. They have no place in our city. And, you know, I am truly disappointed by the muted response of our city leaders and the non-existent, if not truly callous response of the UC. I'd also like to share with you that on the night of January 4th, I flew in the next night. I came into the barriers and said, I would like to walk in and at least survey what is happening in this 6-block area where hundreds of residents of our city live. I want to check on my constituents, right? That's what you're supposed to be doing. They said no. Then they said, okay, maybe, just walk to another street and some other officers will help you in a couple hours. I waited hours to hear from anyone from the UC. Eventually, a UCPD lieutenant came out and said, I'm not gonna let you in either. When I asked, by this point I was over on College, you know, another block or two away from here. I asked if I just stood across the barrier and just stood there, would I be subject to arrest? The answer was yes. Merely standing on the public street would subject me to arrest, not interfering at all with the operation they were conducting. That is what they brought to our city. I'd also like to mention that while I waited 5 hours and ultimately was rejected and prevented from seeing any of my constituents in this city, or excuse me, in that zone, my white colleague, who does not even live in this city, has no elected capacity, not a commissioner, not even a Berkeley community member, was allowed into the zone after about 5 minutes of waiting. Shame! Folks, that's profiling on our streets. There's no other way. I was actually wearing a suit just like this. They still said no.
Shame!
White folk, non-member of our community, walk right in. That's the type of treatment you get when the UC decides unilaterally, without warning, that they are going to enforce illegal checkpoints in our city. Now again, I want to focus back on the severe impacts on residents. Now, I'll be very clear, I care about all residents of our city and any impacts that are affected, but it is worth mentioning the special and unique impacts on Black and brown folks, on disabled folks, on folks who have long dealt with the fear of having unnecessary and potentially violent interactions with the police. You know, I was a UC student, right? I was there at the listening sessions where the Chancellor Chris, these were community sessions for the Black community on campus, where they were promised that they understood the impacts of policing on our community, that they were ready to truly empathize and change our interactions with the police on campus. That's what they said back then. Back when it was politically expedient, they were saying they cared so deeply of the Black community. They don't. They don't, folks, because you can't say you care and then have a police occupation on your streets and then have a press release saying, oh yeah, we're happy with what we did. That's not caring. It's callous. There's a big difference. You know, I give you one more important anecdote of all of this, and I have to invoke his name again, Mr. Kyle Gibson, Director of Communications for Capital Strategies for the university. Whoa. Mr. Gibson lied directly to my face, just to be clear. He didn't realize who I was, so that probably had something to do about it. He thought I was press. I asked him, had you communicated what this operation was going to be to elected leaders in the city? He said yes. That they had clearly communicated to elected leaders and they had fully coordinated, quite like that, yes. I asked him again, it was all elected leaders. I even mentioned the rent board just to make sure. Yes, we communicated with all elected leaders and we're in full coordination. I'm standing right in front of him and he's lying to me, folks. If he feels so freely to lie about interactions with electeds in our city, imagine the lies they're telling the public. Imagine the lack of transparency that they're giving the public. I am truly pissed off, folks, but I gotta keep it. I gotta keep it together because we got more important things to go through in this press conference. So I will just close with this. Community is a lot of things, folks. But again, I came to Berkeley because I was told of free speech. I was told that hippies and students and folks all over got together at this park, got together during the free speech movement, got together during the Third World Liberation Front and changed the dynamics of this university, changed the dynamics of what community looks like. That's why I came here. But now, for some reason, those things, they're just nice history pieces. Maybe the UC will let you read about them in the library, maybe a nice art gala once a year. They don't want you to be able to live them. They don't want it to be out in the community. They don't want it to be a tangible thing. Because folks, they had 8 other sites. Let's be honest, they had 8 other sites. I fully in support of building housing. I understand the housing crisis. I was affected by the housing crisis. Most of our student leaders back here, back there, they were affected by the housing crisis, folks. There's a parking lot they could be building this very project on right now. There'd be less legal costs, no police violence, no destroying a community space, no messing up harm reduction efforts, none of that. And yet they decided to do all of this and build a 20-foot wall between us and not just the space, but the very idea of community in our city. So thank you again for being here. I can't wait to pass it off to our next speaker. Let me make sure, but when he's coming in. So thank you. And again, this space is for community. The hippies, the students, all the folks who come into the city can have housing too, just not here. And they know that. Let's do the right thing, folks. Thank you.